Good afternoon, if you're here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and good morning or good evening, wherever you may be. It's great to have you here on our very first live video for One Ancestor at a Time. My name is Suitaloa Simon Young, and today I would like to share with you a little bit of what happened in my 2025, where I where I began a connection with my Scottish side that I've always known I've had, but didn't quite know that much about it. First of all, I've got to get some summer merch. It's currently summertime in New Zealand. We're looking at 26 degrees here at home, 29 degrees outside in the sun. This is a wonderful warm jacket. And it's the jacket that I took with me to the UK on my first ever trip to my ancestral homelands in September last year. Gonna be doing that for a little while. So September, late summer, early autumn. But the UK had one of its hottest years in 2025. So everything I knew about England and Scotland was that it gets really cold. And that was almost true, except for the time that I was there. So it was muggy in London, unbelievably so, especially in the underground. It was okay in Portsmouth, and once I got up to Scotland, it was a little bit better. And on the final day of my trip, which was the actual reason for going, which was the Blairgowrie and Rattray Highland Games, that was freezing cold. That was absolutely very, very cold. That was the day that I needed this jacket, and I also needed this scarf, because this is the scarf with the tartan of Clan Young, and that's what I would like to share with you today. Clan Young. So you may be like me and go, English name, not a Scottish clan. I knew from the first time that I saw my family tree 20 years ago now that there was a Scottish clan called Clan Young, but I knew that it was also a lowland clan, and I knew that there was somehow a difference between Highland and lowland. I didn't exactly know what it was. When I started this particular One Ancestor at a Time journey, I thought, okay, the clan is going to play a big part in understanding my roots, I suppose, because from my dad's side of the family, we have to go back 7 generations before we find anybody actually in Scotland. Professor John Young of Glasgow University, he lived in Glasgow, surprisingly. So his story, if you're a member of the New Zealand Society of Genealogists, his story is in the December issue of the New Zealand Genealogist Journal. And that is also a story I will be telling on this channel here, but just give me a little while for that. There's some amazing footage and learning from my time in Glasgow, which I love to bring together. But anyway, he's the oldest Young on my dad's side of the family tree. From there, they went to India for 3 generations, and then Australia, and then back to England, and then New Zealand. My grandfather came to New Zealand, and his story is told in the video, The Man Who Never Gave Up. So those are our not very Scottish Youngs. So I joined the Young clan organisation, Youngs of Scotland, last year, and then was asked by Douglas, who is a very selfless and giving member of our Young community, who is kind of the cat herder. It's not a hierarchical organisation. There's not a chief of the clan, but he is, I'd like to call him the cat herder. So Douglas said to me, we don't currently have any convener in New Zealand. Would you like to be involved? And I said, because of the journey that I was on, yes, absolutely. I don't know what it involves, but sure, sign me up. And so I am the convener for Clan Young in New Zealand. So having said yes, I then found out what does that actually mean, and started to get the merch. And the thing that I don't tell you about when you find out about your Scottish clan, it's a little bit like joining a sports team or becoming a fan of a sports team, only to find that you're already a team member. And that was certainly true. So once you discover that there is a tartan, even if it's not an ancient tartan, even if it was only developed in the 19th century when being Scottish and having a tartan became very cool, around the time of Sir Walter Scott, around the time of Mr. Brown, the famous domestic help that Queen Victoria started to confide in. He was Scottish. He was just a sign of that really that popularization of Scottish identity that happened in the 1800s. That's about the same time that Clan Young became a solid entity. And what it was an amalgamation of young families from all around Scotland. They tended to be in the southeast, all around the same place, but not necessarily blood related to each other. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself a bit. When I found that I had this clan, first thing I got was this scarf. And you wouldn't think that somebody who said, let's put green, blue, orange, and purple together, you wouldn't think it would look so nice. I think it looks really nice. But then I'm biased because I've already started to feel this is significant for me. This is my people. Then at the Waipu Highland Games in New Zealand, which is one of our longest running Highland Games and sort of centers of Scottish identity, I was very fortunate to get a special deal on this, the clan crest. And yes, it's just a thing, but the sense of meaning, the sense of purpose that I gather from that. And not only do we have a tartan, we have the crest, which is this lion, this belt, and the buckle. And this is actually incorrect. This is should be a Latin letter, which is the A and the E together, but I'll let it slide because what can I do? But it means Robore Prudentia Praestat means wisdom is greater than strength. And so not only that, I've got this crest to place around the home, but also this to wear. It's not really, there we go. I wore that when I graduated, when I came back from my trip in September. And so that was very meaningful to wear my scarf and this to show this is who I am. This is part of who I am. But words can't really describe how I felt when I got to Blairgowrie at the end of my, it wasn't a very long trip, but it was very intense. And so at the end of this trip, going to meet my clan, seeing my tartan and seeing my father's family name, just amazing. Because a lot of the stories that I've been telling in One Ancestor at a Time haven't been direct paternal descendants, ancestors rather. It's been all over the family tree. There's something about that paternal name. And yet in my scientific and logical mind, I know there's no difference. It's just is what it is. But emotionally, it's good to pay attention to these things and go, yes, if it matters, it matters. Let it matter. Let it become part of you and enjoy it. Even if you're not calling back to something necessarily more ancient. I mean, the 1800s are still pretty ancient by a single person's lifetime. Anyway, so that was the end of the main purpose of my Scottish trip was to reconnect with this clan. Then as part of my trip, as part of my continuing journey, my wife and I went to the Waipu Highland Games, as I said, and had a really nice chat with some other clans that had their tent. They had their membership books. They had a few things for sale. So I talked to Clan Matheson, Mackenzie, Cameron. Did I talk to Cameron? I don't know. Hannay and Davidson. We actually met the chief of Clan Davidson, a proper global clan chief who is a New Zealander whose father found out 20 years ago that he qualified to be the chief and only said yes on the condition that his son would also follow in his footsteps. So I'd love to interview him this year. That's on one of my things to do this year, is to find out how do you be a chief? Because it is one of those things. In my other life, my wife and I work with Pacific Island people, and we have chief titles, different kind of chief. There's a whole video coming up about that. But we see strong traditions in these Pacific Island cultures. But for me, it is a long reach back before I get to something as alien as a clan structure and a different language, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm waffling, which is the reason I do a live, because it takes me ages to write a script and record. And I did want to have more of a sense of a heartbeat, if you like, because these ideas are constantly bubbling around in my head. And this is a way of just letting them out 1 week at a time, one thought at a time, one ancestor at a time. There we go. That was accidentally on brand. So I just want to also thank you for watching, and thank you for your comments, and thank you for your feedback. Now, there's something up with YouTube's systems that I don't necessarily get notified when there's comments. So I need to proactively go in and check. A couple of people recently commented in the last few weeks, and I've just responded now. So thank you, one and all, for your thoughts and your comments. Now, Clan Young. So if your last name is Young, and if you have Scottish ancestry of any kind that's related to that name, you're most welcome to join the Youngs of Scotland. It's a pretty informal coalition of groups. So I'm New Zealand. We're not an incorporated society yet. There's an Australian group. There's a Canadian group. Who else did I meet when I was up there? I met the Youngs from Scotland, just down the road from Blair Gowrie, where we had a tent at the games. And on a future edition, when I figure out how to do it, how to share the screen, oh, it's right there. It's right there, but I didn't prepare, did I? So anyway, on a future edition, I will show you the footage, because when I got to the games, I thought I've missed the opening, but no, they tend to open at 8:30 in the morning, but then the real action starts around 11:30. So I got there at 11:30, and they said, look, we're just getting ready to go and parade around the grounds with our banner and everything. Would you like to join us? Oh, yes, absolutely. That was such a moment to actually, and again, the logical, cynical part of my brain was going, this is the most cliched thing ever. We're parading around Highland Games, most of my fellow Youngs wearing their kilts, and the bagpipes are playing Scotland the Brave. But man, what a buzz. What an incredible buzz it was. Yeah, absolutely. Can't remember where I was going with that. But, oh, that's right. Yes, if you have the name Young and Scottish ancestry related to that name, then yeah, sign up. There are sort of organizations all around the world. As I said, our fearless leader or convener, Doug, edits the Youngs of Scotland Gazette, which is about quarterly, and has news in and around the Young clan, and also has bits of history, because we're all curious, right? We all want to know, especially those of us who haven't been to Scotland or don't live in Scotland, where did our forebears live? And so Doug has written, so there are some books, like this tiny little book, which I got at the Highland Games. It's not really, there we go. The Origins of the Youngs. That's not officially from the clan, but this is massive book, Youngs of Scotland. If you literally threw the book at somebody, this would cause quite a lot of damage. It's quite heavy. It was quite interesting in my carry-on luggage. One of the things about my trip was that I had carry-on only, but this was one of the things that I was willing to make myself a little bit heavier for. And what I found from the book so far is that there are a number of different lineages of Youngs, including, they kind of start with the worst ones first. The border reavers were known for just pillaging and sort of playing both sides, because the borders, you're between England and Scotland, and it's a constant battle for survival. Now, it turns out that my dad's Young line is not related to the border reavers rather. Instead, we're related to the Youngs of Lenny, which are landowners and administrators, but in a similar kind of area, just around that Glasgow kind of area. And so I've yet to learn a bit more about the Youngs of Lenny. We have our own little crest, which is not very widely popularized, so it's very hard to find merch for it. But our motto is "Press Through," which I love. And the crest, or the coat of arms, or I'm still learning all the proper terminology, is an arm like this, holding an arrow. And yeah, that word "press through." So pretty cool. Yet to find out where that actually came from. but isn't it amazing to be able to hang your last name on something with a history? It's a real fascinating impulse. And it was really interesting to talk to the other clan organizations in New Zealand, and always ask the same question with organizations like this: how are the young people responding? And as might be expected, they're not that enthusiastic. And maybe it's the kind of thing that you don't think about until much later in life. And with one ancestor at a time, generally, this is the conundrum that I'm dealing with, is that ancestry is really interesting. History is very, very interesting. Look at the rest of YouTube. History is a great niche to be in. Look at Netflix and other TV channels that are for the mainstream. History is popular. History podcasts are popular. People really want to understand what happened where. And geopolitics. Look at Palestine, Israel. Look at Russia, Ukraine. Even places that aren't at war, India, Pakistan. Where do these conflicts come from? Where do these differing narratives come from? And we seem to be in a global era where we sort of feel like we have to take sides before we know the facts. I want to know the facts, and I want to know both narratives and understand. So that's part of the kaupapa, is the Māori word for, it's the raison d'etre of this channel, is to help us explore not only our personal identities, but how we interact and interrelate with one another. So this is certainly a rambling video. I made sure not to let anybody know that this would be going live, so that I could do one bad live video. But if you're enjoying it, good on you. Thank you very much. So yeah, what else would I like to share? That's right. This is interesting. So at the Waipu Games, not only was I talking to clan leaders, but I just had a few conversations with other people. We went to the Ceilidh in the evening and saw in the new year with dancing and singing, and a lovely folk band was teaching us Highland dancing, which was very considerate of them, because we certainly didn't know it. And the atmosphere that created was beautiful, because it didn't matter if you didn't know, you were so most welcome, and that was lovely. So sat next to a Hungarian guy and his wife, I think, who was her parents were involved in the catering, and then another couple with a Scottish guy wearing a kilt. And so of course I go, oh, what clan is your kilt? And he goes, oh, it's my beer kilt. So he didn't have a strong Scottish accent like that, but he had a Scottish accent. He was actually from Scotland, but he wasn't about his clan identity. And I talked to another actually Scottish man, exactly the same scenario. And now I might be putting two and two together and getting five, but it's really interesting that the people who were actually from Scotland there didn't find a lot of identity in their clans. And something that was said during the day was that there are a lot of enmities and rivalries between clans, most famously the Campbells and the McDonalds. And these things go deep. They go for generations, and most people don't want anything of that. And what I experienced in Scotland, so I went to not only Blairgowrie and Rattray, I went to Edinburgh and Glasgow, of course, but I stayed in the coastal town of Arbroath. Yeah, one of my videos from then shows me there. Beautiful little seaside town, and not many people around, but in the few people that I saw, pretty diverse, actually. Yeah, so perhaps stereotypically, Chinese people running the takeaways, Indian people running the corner stores, and interestingly, English people running the sweet store, and of course, Italian people running the traditional Scottish fish and chip and curry and pizza place. So it was a real sign that modern urbanism is not just an urban Scottish thing. It's Scotland is a nation just like any other that is really diverse, and so perhaps that sense of clan identity is not a very common thing there anymore, except for when you perhaps get into castles and estates and that sort of thing. But when you come to New Zealand and probably America, Canada, Australia, that clan identity becomes really important because we're so far from origin, we're so far from place, we're far from language too, although I'll leave a reminder to say something about language later on. Yeah, we're never more Scottish than when we're far away from Scotland and don't have that sense of root. We want to connect to it. And this is what I guess I've discovered about diaspora populations everywhere. We either hold really tight to it because we are aware of its scarcity, or we assimilate. Like the Youngs. The Youngs became British people. We became children of the empire and perhaps lost something in that process. We lost that sense of a greater thing that we belong to. So recently, just before Christmas, I was speaking with a young man from Tuvalu, the island that is, by all reports, likely to sink with global warming. And he's at an age, 24, where he could choose to assimilate more. He spent some time living in Australia and now in New Zealand. Assimilate more, just become an Australian or a New Zealander, or lean into that culture. And I said to him, you may feel, he was a bit ambivalent about either way. I said, you may feel much more strongly about the culture when those elders that you feel like they're always going to be there aren't there anymore. And especially with Tuvalu has such a small population, the language, the culture kind of disappears. And it's just really, it's humbling for me working with, getting to know people from very small language populations and culture populations to see how they preserve their culture. It's an existential struggle. Now, it's never been that for Scottish. There's so many Scottish people, there's so many Highland Games, that sort of thing. But what was really interesting was the language. So everywhere you go in Scotland, there are dual language signs. There's no, you kind of got to know how to read it to pronounce it. It's not self-explanatory. That's okay. But one of the things I wanted to do, so on my mum's side, I'm related to the Frasers and Mackenzies, real Highland clans with chiefs and ancient history and that sort of thing. And they were, of course, strict Presbyterians and Gaelic speakers. They came to New Zealand in 1840, and I don't know at which generation they stopped using Gaelic in their day-to-day language. So I wanted to have the experience of going to a church or a kirk and listening to a Scottish sermon or hymns or that sort of thing. Now, in my research, I only had time to cover the east coast of Scotland. So I thought, well, where can I find a Presbyterian church on the east coast of Scotland? Turns out there's only one. It's not even Presbyterian. It's the Episcopalian Church of St. Margaret of Scotland in Aberdeen. So yeah. And as it turned out, my rotten luck, they have a Gaelic mass every month except for September because the priest was away. But that was really very interesting to find this church it's a beautiful, it's high church. And that's, I'm a Christian, but I haven't grown up around all the artistry of high church. So I took lots of photos. Again, if I was, perhaps next time, I'll share them on the screen. But yeah, no, big gold statue of Christ, massive altar and beautiful architecture and everything. And I could almost feel my Presbyterian ancestors looking down and in consternation because for them being papish was probably a very bad thing. But anyway, that's one thing that we learn when we look back at our ancestors. They're so diverse. We come from so many people that we have to have a bit of generosity in how we look at people because we have come from so many. And when we start going back in my tree to about 700 years ago, it's going to get real interesting with the kind of diversity of people who are in there. Anyway, that's a bit of a teaser. So yeah, I was thwarted in my desire to hear the language of my ancestors. And then in Youngs of Scotland, I found that the Youngs probably spoke English for the last 1,000 years, which in itself is mind-blowing. Like, I know that my English ancestors obviously spoke English, but Scottish as well. And just to know that this language I'm speaking today is the same language I speak that would be spoken in its variations 1,000 years ago is kind of mind-blowing. And we don't often, again, because of the work that I do with Pacific people, with people who are English as a second language, I realize how much I take that for granted, that there's a continuity of thought, there's a knowing of my history, there's a knowing of how things come together. Now, there's another branch of my family tree, which is German, and that's another one where I don't have access to that culture simply because of the language barrier. All I know is don't mention the war, which is such a sad thing to know a whole nation by. But that's true, and I've obviously gotten to know it a little bit more, and I love my Bach and I love my Beethoven, and I've yet to learn about Goethe, but then I've yet to, plumb the depths of many English writers as well. So yeah, anyway, I just want to thank you for coming along with me on this crazy journey. The question mark on this video was about, am I really Scottish? Am I really part of Clan Young? And the answer is yes. And the answer is, sometimes we look to genealogy and family history, and I used to use those two words interchangeably, but they're actually quite different. Genealogy is the science of specifically who you are genetically related to. Family history is a whole different thing, because our families are who we're genetically related to, but they're also who was with us on the journey. And that could be, I got many in my family tree. It's your found family. It's your friends. It's your neighbors. It's your step parents. So the reason I have the Young family tree is because my great-grandfather's stepfather, so father's stepfather, he married the widow of my great-great-great-grandfather, and he said, I will do a loving thing for these children. I'll help them to know who they are and who they come from. Instead of going, forget Mr. Young, you're now in the Kirkby family. No, bless this man. He actually did the work of a genealogist and a heraldrist, I'm not sure. And he hand drew this beautiful family tree, which was the beginning, which was the parcel that was given to me by my uncle 21 years ago, and was the beginning really of this journey of ancestral discovery. Is he family? He's not genetically related to me, but he is such a special man in my perception. And also, let's not forget the childless aunties and uncles. And so I've done a post on our Facebook page about my Auntie Noni, great Auntie Noni. Dorothy Olive was her name, but Noni was somehow the reason, the name that she became known by. Such a character. And her and her brother James, Uncle James, both of them characters in their own ways. They're beloved by our Young family, both the ones that stayed in the UK and the ones that settled in New Zealand, because they tripped back and forth. They were single. They had nothing to tie them down. So Auntie Noni was an extremely capable woman. While the brothers came to New Zealand on a scholarship, she worked her way as a nanny. She used to work for the Prime Minister of New Zealand at the time. Then she went to Vienna or Czechoslovakia, working for diplomats. Again, as a nanny. She was on the very street that Hitler was driving past, and she said, if I'd only known, I could have dropped something on his head. She had a great sense of humor. James was eccentric. I thought he was a fictional character before I met him. Based on descriptions of him, I thought this person can't possibly be real. But no, he lived a good long life as well. Yeah. So those are the Youngs, and I got the chance to meet my long-lost relatives who stayed in the UK. That was a special part of the journey too. Now, to respect their privacy, I won't share their photos or things like that, but that was really very special to find the ancestral seat, which was a pretty humble house in Portsmouth. But yeah, it's a very special place because it's the place where my great grandfather built when he came back from New Zealand. Anyway, I do waffle, and I'd love to hear some waffle from you. Please add a comment, even if you're watching the replay of this. Love to know what you'd like to see more of. The next full production episode that I'm working on is a sideways step on the family tree. We're going to have a look at my wife's family and the reason that I'm called Suitauloa, the chief name. What a chief is, hint, it doesn't mean you're in charge necessarily. And yeah, the things that an outsider like me learns from being invited into the beautiful Samoan culture. So that's going to be a lot of fun. After that, I'm kind of working on a few at the same time. After that, I want to share with you one of my ancestors who may or may not have been the inspiration for Frankenstein. And then we'll get on to the kindly professor of Glasgow and the ship breakers of Rotherhithe. But yes, this is a two-way channel. I will be doing these every week, so every Friday. Perhaps a little earlier than I have done today, so that it can be viewed both in northern and southern hemispheres and time zones. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching One Ancestor at a Time. This is Suitauloa Simon Young, and looking forward to catching you soon. And don't forget, if you want to get on our mailing list to find out when there's a new anything, oneancestor.co, not .com, oneancestor.co. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon. Ka kite anō.